start.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to start us off. I will introduce Sam, and then we'll get talking, yeah?
Cool.
Okay, welcome to the second video episode of the Homemade Camera Podcast on YouTube. We have a super special guest today, Sam Trachsel. I think I'm saying that right.
Perfect.
Thank you. Sam sent me an email out of nowhere. He is not internet famous, although he should be, about building a giant camera, or a camera that he built already that's giant and shoots direct positives. And I was really interested in it and wanted to talk to him about it. We thought we'd make an episode about it. Sam works at Ars Imago in Zurich. And yeah, we're going to start the show. Sam, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for being on. Hey, Sam, can we start out? Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and how you got into photography.
Well, I work at Ars Imago, and we are really the last film photography store in Switzerland, because every other store went digital and then went bankrupt, so there are no stores at all. And we are really the last place where you can ask questions about paper or chemicals or film or whatever. And I got into photography like 10 years ago or so, because I was working. I studied economics and was working in an office job, and it was just really boring. And I started to take pictures, and even more, I started to develop my pictures, started to print my pictures, and then I got into Ars Imago and discovered this world of analog photography that is so much more crazy than just 35mm photography. And that's about the time where I started to check out Camera Dactyl and Joe Van Cleef and starting to shoot direct positive paper. And yeah, from there it went bigger and crazier and everything else. Until, yeah, I built a giant camera. But I got into photography just by chance, just by doing it. But I'm not trained in photography. Yeah.
So it sounds like you got into it pretty recently. I also have a degree in economics, which has a little bit to do with photography. What year did you sort of pick up photography as a hobby?
I think roughly like 15 years ago or so.
Not that recent.
Yeah, not that recent. But until recently, I just shot 35mm in medium format, just the usual analog photography stuff. But it's about 5 years ago, I started doing large format and pinhole photography, and yeah, discover everything beyond just regular negative film photography. So yeah, in building cameras, I'm not that experienced yet.
Well,
Sam,
looks like a great start to me.
I'll say. Sam, looking at that camera, it looks, deceptively simple, but I kind of know what goes into it, and I don't think it is. I assume that you probably have been a lifelong or at least long-time builder of other things. Am I right?
Yeah, I built a lot of stuff before, but mainly like household stuff: a table, a chair, a lot of stuff for my wife for her kindergarten. So I've built a lot of stuff out of wood before, so I know how to use a drill and a saw, and yeah, that's what it came in handy when I built this camera. Definitely.
It seems like that camera has some woodworking tools as a tripod.
Yeah, exactly. This is just, there are some regular wooden stands where you would put on the wood you're going to work on.
Yeah, we would call those sawhorses, but yeah, that's
yeah, exactly.
It makes it into an octopod. There are 8 legs, so
exactly.
if it's big enough,
Yeah, and I found it's the only way to get it stable, because the exposure times are within minutes, and it has to really be stable. It is hard to level it, because I made some little wood blocks that I can underlay. That is a little bit hard, but yeah, it works. It works.
We're getting ahead of ourselves here talking about this camera already, but I want to ask a little bit more about like the other things that you've built. It sounds like you are a pretty experienced woodworker. Given where you are in the world, and Graham's going to hate me for this question, maybe, but what do you know about clocks?
Clocks? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, can we ask him about chocolate as well, or
I mean,
what else? You know?
But chocolate is not necessarily related to cameras, whereas
no, but except it's
clocks
related to photographers. I mean, have you ever listened to the FPP? They're on about chocolate all the time, so I think that's just as legitimate.
All right, ask your chocolate question, Graham.
No, that's good. That's fine. That's fine. I think we're done with our stereotyped Swiss questions.
Well, okay, but it's
right?
It's not a stereotype question. It's like clocks and cameras share the same heritage a lot, right?
I'll accept that. Yeah,
right. And it like, okay, there's springs and levers and gears and cams in a clock, but even at its most simplest, like since the Middle Ages, people have been building wooden clocks that are incredibly precise.
Cabinetry.
Yeah.
Yes, and all four of us have been building cuckoo cameras for quite a while.
Yes. Okay. I'm thinking that Ethan was off the screen at that point, so I'll just do it. He did this. Okay. And once again, we're doing this as a podcast. We're also doing this as a YouTube. So if you want to go over to YouTube, if you're listening as a podcast, if you want to go over to YouTube and watch this, it's the Homemade Camera YouTube channel. And what Ethan did was essentially a resigned facepalm. But yeah, exactly. So let's get back on track. So you've been you built this camera that we're going to be talking about, the Big Tuna. Have you and you talked about building some other things. Have you built other cameras on the way up to this one?
Yep.
Have you and let's talk about some of that.
Well, the easiest build for a camera is a pinhole camera. So I started building a lot of pinhole cameras, from very small to reasonably big to even bigger, but they were always pinhole cameras because it's so easy everything is very, very easy. And actually, when I saw the video of Ethan and Joe, where they did positive reversal color prints, that was like the starting point to really build a proper camera, because with pinhole cameras, there is no need to go very precise with paper and paper development, because everything has its dreamy kind of nature. But then we thought, okay, when you can do color pictures, you need a better camera. So all the experience from just building a light tight box and building some sort of placement for the paper, I knew all that before I built this camera. So that helped a lot, because getting a box light tight sounds easy, but the bigger the box is, the more complicated it gets.
Sam, do you happen to have any photos on your computer of those first bunch of pinhole cameras, or do you have any that you can show us in your house?
Maybe I have some. Yeah, just of the really small cameras I did.
Let's take a look.
Film camera. Where can I show this actually? So this was like one of the. I built a lot of them. It's just as the size of a film canister.
Wow, is that an old aluminum film can, or in Zurich can you still get aluminum film cans?
Well, we still produce them, but this one looks to be an old one. Yeah. I guess it's an old one.
So let's describe this camera. It is an aluminum old style screw top film canister that a single roll of 35 millimeter film comes in. It has a hole on one side, so I assume it's got a curved plane. Is that correct?
Exactly. The picture is curved all the way up to the hole, so it's nearly 360 degrees. So it's a lot.
So are you putting film in this, or are you putting paper in this?
I both. It works with both.
Okay.
I put direct positive paper in, because then you have like these little postcards that have a really weird bend. And I built a bunch of them, because you can take one picture, and then you have to develop the picture. So I built a bunch of them just to carry them around and to take multiple pictures.
Sure. So is there a website here that we can send people to so that they can see it as well?
It is our blog. I have a link, but I can maybe share the link.
I've got the link to the Ars Imago blog. We can put
yeah. Okay, so it's on the Ars Imago blog for anybody who wants to follow along. Okay, so so this is it's handy. It's pocketable. You can pocket a bunch of these. Well, without them rattling around in your pants and your wife saying, "Hey, quit with the rattling on the pants."
This
can you tell I hear that?
Hold on a sec. This looks like a really nice camera, and I wanted to mention for anyone who's not forced to look at faces on YouTube that it looks like there's a gaffer tape cummerbund that functions as a shutter that slides up and down.
Yeah, it is an elastic band with a light tight fabric sewed in, so I can just place the box or the canister and then just slide open the elastic band.
Oh,
very nice. It was the easiest way for a shutter, because there is nothing else. It's very easy and it's always tight.
Yeah, that looks.
Are you doing your own pinholes, or are you buying the pinholes for this? Because that is a heck of a sharp pinhole on 35 millimeter or the equivalent size paper.
Actually, I think this one in this particular camera is not manufactured by me. I bought that one from eBay.
Okay.
And I built a lot of my own pinholes, and I really like doing them by myself, because they are not as perfect. And I like the more dreamy nature of pinholes. Yeah.
I have a saying, and that saying is going down the fidelity curve. The closer you are, sharp is sharp, and sharp is good in a lot of situations. And with some of my pinhole cameras, I strive for sharp. But there are other situations where I want a messy, dirty image, and that's the down the fidelity curve.
Yeah, definitely.
I really love how these render, particularly that first image from the pinhole. For those of you listening to the podcast, it's sort of like a 180-degree view down a street that looks like, from the very early days of photography. It is impressively sharp, but also extremely distorted. And, it kind of looks to me like one of those rotating swing lens, like a Horizon or a wide lux type of image. I love it. It's extremely impressive for something that you took with a film can.
And it is in the foreground. You can see some weird lines and shapes. And this is actually the bench I placed it on. It was a wooden bench, and I really like about pinhole photography that some regular things like a wooden bench suddenly looks like a weird something else.
It almost reminds me of like those what do you say? The solar can where you get the arcs from the sun, but it's sort of on the bottom of the image and it's a bench. I also think that these pictures benefit from having like old style European architecture in them. They look just like, pictures from Nadar.
And they're timeless. They're a lot of them are timeless because of that architecture.
Yeah, I have a question. So also a note, because there's so much distortion with a 180-degree plus view, that actually works really well with the natural vignetting that you're also getting. The two things work together so that it isn't it's not distracting, and it focuses you're on the center, but everything else in the image is framing it in a really interesting way. So that's one thing. But the other thing I wanted to ask you is, when you use film in this, do you think about which way the emulsion goes? Are you like snipping pieces of film and stuffing them in the can in a dark bag or something like that?
Yeah, I used orthographic film, so I could load it in red light.
And are
But
you thinking about which way the emulsion points are?
Yeah.
So that's
definitely
facing the pinhole, that side.
exactly. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
What year did you make this film camera?
This I think I did this last year, but I did some of them before. This was just like the pinnacle of film canister pinhole cameras. That's why it was probably
it is by far the best film camera that I have ever seen. You know, I've seen hundreds of these. I've made versions of them, but I've never really taken excellent photos with them. I think that's really impressive, particularly like within the ethos of this podcast, which is, you know, making excellent stuff with the most basic of ingredients.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I keep trying to scroll to see what else you got on this this page, but I realize
I'm doing
screen
the
share.
same thing. I have
there's even a little video of the shutter. There you can see the shutter.
There it
is. Oh,
is.
clever.
Yeah, so I have a couple of those aluminum cans stashed away. I'm definitely going to make one of these. It's beautiful.
You know, my dad told me a story from when he was in high school. He was a photographer as well, and he, you know, worked in the days when aluminum film cans were common, and he had grown some iodine crystals in chemistry lab, and so he was keeping them around his neck in a film can, you know, just to show people his iodine crystals. And one day, you know, his chest starts burning, and he realized that they were reacting with the aluminum, and they had eaten a hole in the can. Better as a camera.
Yeah.
All right, Sam. What else do you? What else have you made? What can you show us before we get to the giant one?
Unfortunately, I do not have any other home-built cameras that I took pictures of.
Okay. Can you describe some that are, you know, somewhere between a film camera and the camera that you could put a house inside of that's behind you?
And there is not much I did in between. I really just jumped for a really big camera.
It is extremely impressive that you just went for it without any intermediate steps. I have learned in my younger years to try not to bite off more than I can chew, which bit me back a bunch of times.
Yeah,
I don't actually know, Ethan. You haven't learned that.
Yeah. Well, successively. All right. So, do you guys have any more questions before we get into the meat of this thing? I want to see this giant camera behind Sam.
No, let's go ahead.
Sam, tell us. Let's get into it. Tell us about this. What do you call it? The big tuna. It's even got like a little fish sticker on it.
Yeah, I can. Should I show you around? Maybe.
Yeah, please.
Because okay, well, it started when we thought about taking pictures on colored paper, and then we thought it would be cool to have big pictures that you can hang on the wall without enlarging, without scanning or anything. And then we came up with 16 by 20 because that is just a really nice setup. And when we looked at the internet for lenses, I found out that those Russian lenses, like from Lomo, they go for like $150.
Wait, what lens is that? I have a Lomo, I think 850.
It is Lomo 600 f10.
Cool.
without a shutter, there is no shutter inside, just the aperture.
So I have a lens I've been saving up for the same purpose.
Yeah.
It's a 610 millimeter. I was very lucky and got it quite a bit cheaper than yours, but it is huge. This thing weighs,
it is, yeah.
You know, 4 pounds or something, and yeah.
But so for our podcast listeners, this is a barrel lens. It has no shutter in it. It does have aperture, right? It does have an aperture control. And it has like a flange on it and that is just screwed into the front plate
exactly.
of this camera.
Hey, Graham, your camera's off.
Uh-oh. Okay.
And the image circle of this lens is even bigger than 16 by 20. So which is cool, but there is a danger of building an even bigger camera because this image circle of this lens is so big.
Sam, is that image circle that big even when you have it focused at infinity?
Yeah. And even wide open, it covers 16 by 20 easily. Wow. So when stopping down, I think stop down, you could go way bigger than this. Maybe you have some vignetting, but yeah, it's not really a big deal.
That sounds like my lens. They were designed for copying work.
Exactly.
So they were used more as a macro lens, but they can copy a huge poster size piece of paper or whatever. Yeah. And then, but I'm really glad to hear it'll cover 16 by 20 at infinity. That's great.
Mm-hmm. And then I just bought it, just for fun. I bought it, and after that it was like, yeah, I have to build it. There is no way around it. I have to build it. And then when the whole country shut down due to pandemic, I had time to build it. So that's the main reason I really did it.
Wait, so you saw some videos on Direct Positive. You said, I want to do that, and then you just bought a lens, and then you were committed.
At first, with my 5x7 camera, I did some tests. So I could see, I knew that the paper is going to work with filtration, with exposure. I knew that paper is going to work, but I did a lot of testing on 5x7 color paper. It was a nightmare, like hundreds of sheets.
Me too.
Yeah.
Hey,
yes.
It looks like there's some hinges on the. So for those people on the audio side, you know, it looks extremely simple, which I am sure it is not. It's like a big box with an arm sleeve, and you know, it's like nice plywood. It looks like there's 2 hinges on the front plate, or are those just brackets down at the bottom?
You mean here?
No, there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They are just because it's the front board is a little bit heavier that it can support the lens, so it just screwed in some additional hinges just to make it more stable. And
awesome.
Because first I just assembled the front and it was really wobbly.
And then to the left of the lens, is there a hole that you've like plugged with a bung, or what's going on there?
There is just a small hole. Because when the lens is open, wide open, I painted the back of the camera, I painted pure white. And then you can just take off this cap, which is just a corkscrew. And when you then look inside the camera, you can actually see the pictures and frame the picture on the back wall.
Wow.
Because I don't have any film holders, but I have to frame the picture. And without the ground glass, this is the easiest way to see. I think I cannot show it on the webcam, but it is a pretty bright picture projected from the lens onto the back wall.
That is absolutely brilliant. I've been looking for ways to do away with ground glass. That's really great.
And it works quite well, yeah.
It seems hard enough to frame and compose and focus on ground glass when you're looking in the same direction as your subject, but when you're backwards and the camera is pointing this way, do you find that sort of hard and disorienting to move the box around, or have you figured it out?
It is quite hard. Yeah, framing is probably the hardest part, because when you want to go up, I have to underlay the camera with wooden blocks so that it goes up. So really everything is very manual. There is no gears and no some stuff like this. And first I thought I could focus as well this way, but it's impossible to get pictures in focus through this hole. So that's why on the back of the camera, when we walk around, maybe you can see it now, I drilled in a small hole. And in there,
this is looking this is looking more and more like a camera that I would build. The little cover just fell to the ground. So, yes.
So that hole, we're looking at a hole right in the back of the camera that appears to be about 2 or 3 centimeters in diameter.
Exactly, yes. And it's covered with just a wooden cover. And inside there is an old ground glass I had in a broken Rolleiflex camera. And I just installed that on the same level as the paper will be. And when I'm looking in there, I can actually focus in the center of the picture on ground glass.
That's
so I can
so you're framing by looking through the front, but you're focusing by looking through the back.
Exactly.
Now, I can't wait to see the focus mechanism on this.
The focus mechanism is really,
maybe I'm getting
as you would expect, the focus mechanism is really complicated. The whole camera is just 2 wooden boxes sliding inside each other. And there are some handles on, and then I just slide it out.
Beautiful.
Okay, so it's just a for the listeners, it's a box in box. One box slides in, the other one. That's the focusing mechanism.
That's the focus.
And
so,
do you have a way of clamping it down so that you don't?
I mean, it weighs 800 pounds. What do you need to clamp?
At first I thought I had to clamp it down, but it's actually it's too heavy. It won't do anything.
Okay. That's known as a gravity clamp.
Exactly.
It uses physics. Yeah. Right.
So I've actually built a very similar camera to this. When I started doing direct positives, Joe brought over a tailboard camera that he had made years ago, which had some deficiencies, but was also one of the most fun cameras that I had ever used. And it was just a box like yours, right? And it was so fast to use. And so we made together some laser cut version of it. But what I found was I really needed a tailboard, because as I pulled the inner box out the back, it would sort of sag and I would get not perfect alignment. So the tailboard sort of kept it up. I wonder if you have just done this with better precision, or the fact that it's so big.
The 2 boxes, they fit in so snugly, I had to sand them down to really fit them. So it's a really snug fit. And I only focus to like 3 or 4 meters, and then it expands like 10 centimeters out. So it's not a lot that comes out at the back. There is no problem until now. Maybe if I'm going to take portraits or like really close stuff, then I have to rethink it probably. But for landscapes and everything down to 3 meters, it works pretty well.
Wow. And so moving on systems, I love that you have an Afghan box camera style sleeve there. Do you have one on either side, or just? I mean, I assume that you can't even reach around.
There's one here on this side, and the other one is on the other side, and I can reach in with both arms. So
are you like 8 feet tall?
It works quite well, but it looks weird. That's like the weirdest part. When people walk by you and you're like inside this box, they think you are mental.
Yeah.
And then inside are just two paper boxes. One is for unexposed and one is for exposed. And then I just lift open one box and hang it with magnets in the back.
And they just fit down in the bottom of the camera?
Yeah, exactly. They're sitting down here in the bottom of the camera.
So these armholes have sleeves in them with an elastic base to that sleeve, so that so it keeps the light out. It's very much like a changing bag. It's just like the sleeves off
they
of a changing bag.
They are from a changing bag. I just
perfect.
Put them off and glue them on.
How did you glue them? Or is there like a retaining ring there?
There is a retaining ring here, and I glue them on there, and then the whole ring onto the camera. Wow. Because at first I just attached them to the camera, and they were always hanging inside the camera and making some weird shadows on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just cardboard, a cardboard ring that sits on top of the camera. Very easy.
Sam, can we see inside the camera? Can you pull the back off, or? Oh.
Of course, I'll just put it here.
Yeah. Hey, before you do that, would you demo what it looks like with your arms inside the camera? I mean, this thing is what, like 20-something inches wide. It's like wider than my shoulders. I imagine that it's like really hard gymnastics to get in there.
Well, I don't think he needs to get
like this.
Oh, no.
That's so good.
Okay, so actually, I think that we may have Sam, if you could do that one more time. Ethan may have pulled the audio or pulled the video by laughing during that. So I just want to see that. Yeah. So say something now, Sam. So you pull the video.
Yeah. So now just put my arms inside, and it's quite. You can reach around quite easily and just hang the paper inside the camera. It's really
perfect.
Really simple.
Perfect. So, and I want to do a little bit more description. This looks like it is made out of plywood. What is the thickness of that plywood?
It's about, I think about 5 millimeters, which is
okay.
I don't think
it's
quarter inch.
Quarter inch. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not that thick, but it's still about. Yeah, it's heavy. It's quite heavy.
It looks like a very sturdy camera. Like you could roll that thing down a flight of stairs and it would be fine.
Yeah. It wouldn't need this thickness of plywood, but yeah, it's just the one I had.
Mm-hmm.
And then one other interesting feature, because for the color paper, you need filtration because the colors will always be off. And the filters I have are like 3 filters. They are really dark. And if I put them inside the camera, I cannot compose anymore because the picture is too dark. Mm-hmm. And if I put them in front of the camera, because I don't have a shutter, it's always too dark. So I'll just, maybe you can see it. I just put them on a hanger, the filters, that I can pull up out of the way of the lens. And when I take pictures, I just pull them down again.
And does that peg pull out of the top and go into the side to keep them up while you're focusing?
Exactly. It's like this, and then it just, so this is the default mechanism when I'm composing pictures.
So clever. Hey, can we see that from the inside?
Yeah, I can open it up.
Ethan, describe that so that
while Sam's doing this, for those of you listening, it's like he's got a rod with the filters on the end. We're about to see inside and how the filters are attached, but he pulls the rod up from the front of the camera and then puts a peg through the center of the rod to keep them out of the way of the lens while he's composing.
And on top of the rod, there was a disc which stops the rod from dropping in the camera, and also, when it's down, serves as a light trap.
Like this. It's really simple. It's as simple as it could be.
That's great. And is that just like a Kodak Ratten filter or a set of filters?
I found out as much as like you did as well. It is multi-grade, Ilford multi-grade filters.
I see. That's Joe's method.
00, I think, 1. And I have some very thin tungsten to daylight filters, and I put a few of them in, so it's not as cool anymore, the color. Mm-hmm. So it's really about 4 or 5 filters.
Yeah.
And the filters is attached to the bottom of the rod by a little butterfly nut in a bolt. And then I guess you must have a way to know when you're lifting it up and down that you've got it perpendicular to the light path. Is there a mark or something?
No, just in the downward position. It's as far as away as it should be without getting tangled in the lens.
Right. Right. It's very close to the lens. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's about it. And in the other back, maybe you can see it. There's just a painted white back where I put the paper. I have some small magnets holding it in place.
Awesome.
And this is the small ground glass from my old Rolleiflex, and just the paper boxes. That's it.
And it looks like you even put flaps on the inside of your sleeves.
Exactly.
Very nice.
I noticed that when I'm pulling out the hands from the sleeve, sometimes a little bit of light gets in. So I have some curtains installed here with light tight fabric, and they just fold over the holes for the sleeves. So then it's really, really light tight. And
That's
I never
amazing.
had any light leaks or anything anymore. That was like the last problem I had to solve, because when pulling out the sleeves in this position, sometimes there are light leaks.
Do you guys have any more camera related questions, or I'm dying to see some photos you shot with this thing?
I think we've covered the camera quite well. I'm looking at. I'm scheming ways to rip it off personally, but so I've got to figure out. A build that uses a lot of these ideas. So
yeah, the mighty minnow.
I'm excited.
Yeah, and all the ideas are very, very simple, because the whole country was in lockdown and I couldn't get any supplies, any wood, anything. And I think if I had more time and more access to different supplies, the camera would be way more complicated.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, I like about it that it's so simple. Everything on it you can build even without a workshop. It is really
okay. So yeah, that's kind of my question. So what would you do differently if you were to build it today? So if you were to build it without the limitations that you had at the time?
Well, I would probably install a proper shutter mechanism, because now I only have like this hood I put on and take off.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when I take pictures wide open, the exposure times are like 15 seconds, and you're just too slow for 15 seconds. So
the shutter then is like a little leather cylinder. Looks like sewn out of leather. Is that right?
Exactly. It's cardboard covered in leather.
Mm-hmm.
I would do that differently, and I would probably install the sleeves a little bit better. I would really make a proper attachment ring with really the right size sleeves, and not just the sleeves from the changing bag I had. So that, because it would be more comfortable to reach inside the camera with proper attached sleeves.
So when I built a camera like this, I was using a lot of thin plywood, and I don't know, I assume Swiss lumber is a little bit more precise, but my lumber was, once in a while I would get like a board that was really twisted. And so my method was to do a lot of like lamination and interlocking joints, so that by the time I put it together and clamped it in the right position when the glue set, everything was perfectly straight. But I mean, just looking over the webcam, your joinery looks beautiful. And I'm not exactly sure how you did it. Do you have like biscuits in there, or I don't know what they call them in Zurich.
I just had glue and nails. So it's just glued and then with small nails held in place.
I think you're looking at the quality of the plywood. I used to work at a cabinet shop, and there's construction grade plywood is very inconsistent, but cabinet grade plywood made properly, it's much better to work.
Yeah, the wood was like perfect. Everything was really flat, and it was really nice to work with.
It looks like all of your cuts are really, I mean, like the joinery looks great. It doesn't have any like dovetails or router stuff, but it's everything is like flush, and I don't see any crookedness or gaps. I don't think I could do that with nails in 100 years.
Yeah, it was. The first few joints are always a nightmare because everything wobbles, but then it got pretty easy, and that's the only thing really carpenter did before lockdown. It was like the last day, and he just made my boards. He just really saw them precisely. That's the only thing a professional did. And I think it was worth it, because with my handsaw, I would like, yeah.
So I do have a home technique that you can use with your handsaw. Make a cut slightly oversized and then sand it to the precise line using some sort of fence or ruler.
Yeah, I did.
It takes a little time, but you can. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I did a lot of sanding with this camera.
Right. But
because
that's
the two boxes, they had like no tolerance. So I had to sand them down in order to get them fit snugly.
And so, Sam, you had somebody else make the cuts, I assume, on like a table saw with a nice sliding fence.
Yeah.
Did you draw this thing out by hand or make a CAD model, or did you just come up with it in your head? What were the plans you gave the carpenter?
I just gave him no plans at all. Just, I need one board in this dimension and one board in this dimension. I have a little notebook, and I just started drawing plans, and they got more refined through the whole notebook. And then in the end, I had just like the precise measurements I would need.
Did you draw it like? Did you draw it in 3D and then like unfold the panels, or?
No, it was just maybe I can grab my old notebook. Then
yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, that was like the first drawing I did of the idea of the camera. So it just started like this. In a meeting we had, I just started drawing the idea of sleeves and a cutout where the sleeves would interlock with the other box. And from there, I just started, drawing rough models of the dimensions. And then it went all the way to like final plans. Those were my final plans. That's all I got.
Whoa.
So
those are great.
No computer, no 3D work, just thinking about dimension and boxes and everything. Yeah, that's the one. I just went to the carpenter with these dimensions. I need one board in this dimension, one in this dimension. Yeah, that's it.
So do you do a lot of drawing or mechanical drawing sketches of things you'd like to build? I assume you do the same for tables and things. I got books and books and books of this.
Exactly. I have like a lot of those little notebooks, and I have everything I'm thinking about, everything I want to build. I always have to do a sketch, because otherwise I cannot really see what I'm doing. So it's always with sketches. And actually the next sketch is already on, and we maybe can talk about this later.
Stereo.
It is stereo.
Okay, so for those of you at home, it's a picture of a similar type of. It looks like a box in box, but it's got two lenses on the front. And is the idea to shoot onto a single sheet of paper for that?
Yeah, I have this big camera now, but now everything went back to normal. I have to work. I have a small child that is running around, so the camera is becoming very impractical to just have it around. I'm going to use it for I have a few projects in mind, and actually somebody will probably lend it and do some of his projects as well. But for an everyday camera, it's just not practical.
I think what you need to do is put a plant on it, and like ivy, let it grow down over, and just leave it in the living room.
I was going to say strap lugs for a neck strap. That'll make it practical.
But then I was thinking about, okay, the direct positive colored paper is really nice, but it's just too big. So I have to build a smaller camera. But going back in size is just no fun. It's no fun if you take big pictures and then suddenly you have small pictures. It's not really fun. And that's why I'm trying to add another feature just to do them in stereo, which means a 10 by 15 paper. And I'll do a stereo picture on 10 by 15 color paper. And then I have a smaller print, but then people can view it in 3D with a 3D goggles I already have. So that's like doing smaller prints, but then they have to be in 3D at least.
And one of the things about 3D is that really because of our normal interocular distance, you can't do a big 3D and expect people to really view it well. So it kind of needs to be a small device unless they stand very far back from.
But there is no need for big 3D prints. So right. I thought that's like a brilliant next idea just for a easy carry around camera.
So one of the things that I noticed about the color reversal process for RA4 paper is that it really lends itself, I think, to bigger and bigger cameras, which sort of led me down the trying to build a 20 by 24 when I get my laser in. But is because it has sort of like that, you know, it's not even a grain, it's sort of like a texture to the images. Have you encountered this? Like,
well, actually, when I saw your video and you were talking about this texture, I didn't have that. So my pictures are sharp until the very end. So this is like
whoa! What paper and chemistry are you using? That's amazing.
And when you zoom in, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there is absolutely no grain. There is just detail and shadows, and yeah, it is insane.
That's crazy. That's probably the best print I've seen out of this process.
It is really. This one it's hanging in my daughter's room because she likes big noisy machines, and it came out really, really great. And there is no grain. It is Fuji Crystal archive paper.
That's what I'm using.
With the Tetanol Air RA4 kit.
All right, I guess I'm going to order some Tetanol the next time.
I think you developed the first development you did with Dectol.
Yep.
And I did with multigrade, Ilford multigrade, but I'm not sure if that makes a big difference.
That's it. Right. So actually, I don't know if this was pre or post video, but Joe and I drilled down into this pretty far, and we were talking to whoever it is, the photo engineer on Photrio. He's into it, or photochemist. We noticed that you could see that pattern already after the first developer. So we decided that it had to be first developer related, right? You can see it in the black and white negative. And so we tried Dectol at different dilutions and different temperatures. I assume you're just doing it at room temperature.
Yeah.
And we thought like maybe we would start, I have like built some homemade temperature controllers, but we didn't want to get that far if we didn't have to, because ultimately we want to do it outside without a generator, you know. I think we tried one other paper developer, but we did not use Ilford multigrade. But
the best results I got with a very, very weak paper developer. It's our own brand. It's called RCMago PE, and it doesn't even have like hydroquinone in it. It's like extra. It's like based on vitamin C. And the best results I got with this one. It was not very aggressive, and just for like 5 minutes. I did development for 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And are you finding that you have to really sort of overexpose the paper so that like the negative is almost black, right? So you can cut down through a lot of the excess silver to get a good exposed positive?
I didn't notice that. My negatives, they look quite normal. So they're not very dark negative pictures.
Interesting.
And I do the color development, I do at room temperature as well.
Okay. I'm going to make some more progress on this the next time I pick it up.
I found out that the temperatures for the paper color developer, just the first developer, it has to be, the paper and the chemistry has to have the same temperature. But I did it at 38 degrees at first, and then I started doing it at 20 degrees, and it worked as well.
Yeah.
So I think my developing techniques are very, very rough.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, I spent a lot of time printing color negatives, both like C prints and RA4 back in the day, and like color temperature was really important to keep like tone, but more importantly, color consistent. But I really, really did not want to build a process around having to be at body temperature. That seemed way too hot for, work in the field.
But I found out that because it is a reversal process, because everything you're going to develop with the color developer, it's like everything is fully exposed. So you don't.
So it doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. When you enlarge like from negatives with proper development, you really have to get all the color layers in the right amount of development time. But since it's fully exposed, everything is fully exposed to light, I think it makes it way more tolerant to temperature and developing times.
I think that's a beautiful insight. That's a very similar insight that I have had to the black and white process, but you've taken it a step further, which is that, you could use a lot of things to control contrast. Like in normal black and white printing, right? You could control contrast normally with like RC paper or paper grade and filtration, but you could also control contrast with developing time, even though it's not recommended because you start throwing so many variables in. And a lot of people have asked me, how does the first exposure versus the second exposure time, vary, and or the first development time. But the insight that Joe and I had was that we would use the first developer to completion, right, as much as it could go, which just removed an entire variable from the process. And it sounds like your insight is that it removes a couple variables later on in the process. I think that's very clever. I've learned something.
It's the easiest way to fully develop the first developer. So you fully develop all the silver that has been exposed inside the camera, and then you fully expose the rest of the paper to light and fully develop in the second stage.
And so are you just developing these in a bathroom, or do you have a dark room? I assume you're not doing them inside the camera.
No, I was thinking about this as well. Maybe you could fit in a drum, but I have a small dark room in the basement near my workshop. And just 16 by 20 inches, just the biggest paper I can handle inside this room. And I actually do it with half a liter of chemistry. So it is really, I don't need a lot of chemistry as well. So it's very economical.
And are you like constantly agitating the trays up and down?
Exactly. Everything is constantly agitated there.
Hey, Sam, do you have any more?
For mini labs, am I right?
Yeah.
Have you tried some other different papers?
Not yet. There is only in Europe. There is really only Fuji you can get. Yeah. You could order some rolls of Kodak paper, but you have to cut it by yourself because you can only get it in the size of a roll.
Can we see some more photos? I'm dying.
Unfortunately, the ones I have here, I have like another one from the truck. I did like 2 from the truck, but this came out a little bit too bright. And I have some more trees. There's some more, and the other ones are, unfortunately, in the basement. Yeah, I did portraits as well, but they looked horrible because the flesh tones were way off. And I accidentally took some double exposures as well, which in detail I did. It's like a blue, like, I don't know how to call it in English.
We would call that a dumpster.
Same sheet twice. And that's possible as well. I have to explore this a little bit more as well because, it's a double exposure, unfortunately.
This kind of reminds me. Have you ever seen The Five Obstructions? It's a Lars von Trier movie.
Maybe.
Graham and I have talked about this a bunch. Maybe he's tired of it, but it's this movie where
see it, but.
Lars von Trier finds his most favorite filmmaker, like one of his inspirations, who, he made this maybe in the early 2000s or something, late 90s. And his favorite filmmaker, I can't remember the guy's name, blanking on it, but he finds him and challenges him to remake a movie that he had made in like the 60s or 70s. but each time he gives him a different obstruction. Like in one, I think he can only use 15 frame clips, so like half a second at a time. And in one, like he has to shoot it, you know, in like, I don't know, you should check it out. But this project, and particularly shooting color positives on paper, the way you're going about it really reminds me of that. And a lot of the things that we do around here remind me of that. But I think you've really like figured out, okay, these are the obstructions to this process. How do I use them? Like, and photographing like the blue dumpster, you know, is like, okay, blue things look great. Let's use it for that. I really love that. I think it's super clever.
And I always like this about analog photography, that you always have to work with limitations, because other people say, oh, you're only shooting black and white. Or when I carry a large format camera up the hill, people are like, okay, you only have this lens, so you cannot take everything else. And I always really enjoyed the limitations of analog photography, that you have your setup and it can do this or that, and you have to work creatively around these obstructions. I think that
limitations are the mother of creativity.
It is really, really cool. So a digital camera that can do everything is like, I wouldn't know what to do with it, because I need some sort of limitations in order to get creative.
But I often think that there's two types of photographers, right? One type is really interested in pictures, and the other is really interested in cameras. Certainly, I fall a little bit into both camps, right? But I used to buy and sell cameras, and I've been to 50 states meeting photographers, and it was so boring to me, the people who wanted to talk about the gear, right? Like, I had seen it all. I wanted to give them a price and buy it or not, move on. But like, what I loved is when they would be excited about some work they made and show me. And I think about this also in terms of like, the people who were really into the gear were often into like limitless gear. And I fell into this trap for sure when I got into it, is like, I wanted a camera that could do everything and capture any situation that I might be in. And over the years, you know, I figured out it was not really about being able to take a great photo of everything. I'm not really a photojournalist. It was about being able to take a couple great photos, whatever they were of, you know, which I'm still working on. But I think you have figured that out with a wooden box really, really well.
Yeah, it has both sides. It is, you can talk about camera and gear, but also, yeah, it is just there to take pictures.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Sam, I know like when we first started talking, you showed me that Ars Imago blog post that you made. Maybe we can go through some of that, or if you have some other photos of you working with the camera in the field, or...
Unfortunately, it is not well documented. I was always alone by myself out, and I built it alone by myself, and it is really badly documented, the whole process. I didn't think it would matter to a lot of people what I'm doing in my basement, so I didn't take pictures of the working progress. So I can only show you the camera, but...
So at this point, I'm going to remind all of our home builders that take pictures as you build it. So when you submit it to the zine, then we'll have those. Now, we don't require that, you know, for zine. I'm going to just drop in. We're going to do a zine again this year, and the deadline is the end of August, and you're going to send all of your stuff to hmczine2020.com. So no, sorry, not sorry. I'll do that again. hmczine2020@gmail.com. So that's what our that's where we want everything to go to. And Sam, you're gonna send us whatever you got of this, right?
Okay, everything I have.
Cool. So you actually answered one of my questions that I forgot to ask, which was, do you have help operating the camera? Right. I could see that a camera like this, you might want somebody, you know, pulling focus or moving the camera around while you're looking, or you just do it all yourself.
Until now, I did it all by myself. I had a car. Well, actually, I do not own a car, which is probably funny for you. guys in the States. I don't own a car. But I had a friend helping me for one pictures in the city, because it was like, we had to carry it around the block when we couldn't get there with the car. So he helped me. But other than that, I did it all by myself until now. But a lot of my friends are like, okay, I want to join in. I want to hang a picture of this and that in my bedroom. And they will come along, and then it will be easier to set it up and to focus and everything. Yeah.
I assume it's like a camera that draws people's interest, right? Like I from 7,000 miles away needed to talk to you about it. Like I assume that people who see it in person, I assume that it's the type of camera that sort of gets people engaged in the process and curious. I wonder how you use that sort of in your work, besides just tricking people into carrying your stuff around.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great way to also to show people what you can do when you were up to something, because a lot of people stopped and looked at my camera, and there was a lot of people, they didn't understand. They walked away not understanding what I'm doing. And I think a camera like this is a good way to show people, okay, there is still color paper, there is still analog photography, there are still people doing old photography. And I think it's a nice way to keep everything alive when you meet people who really do not understand what you're doing. It's a great tool to show people analog photography.
Have you had the opportunity to bring it into the Ars Imago shop? I assume that the people who
Not
show
yet.
up there would be, super interested.
Yeah,
maybe try and buy some.
At the moment, the shop has to be. We have no space there because we have to block everything due to pandemic. But I'm planning to do a workshop on this camera, maybe next year, where people can take pictures and experience color positive development. Definitely, we will do that. Definitely, yeah.
Maybe you put that in between the checkout lines and put a bunch of film on top of it, and that's where you can store it.
Yeah. You can live in it if your house burns. Yeah, but I'm planning to do a lot more stuff with the camera, just experience-wise, taking people along, making a workshop, because when you see color paper developing in daylight into a color print, it is so insane. It really is insane.
Yes. Hey, Sam, can we just go through that blog post as a screen share? Would you just walk us through it a little bit? I'm sure the people who have made it this far in this video will go read and look for themselves, but might be kind of a nice thing to do.
There is not a lot of content in yet, because we did it when the whole country was in lockdown. We had to do something to just entertain people because the shop was closed. But until now, we only have like where you can see the whole story about the big camera. You have something about film developing. You have something about lumen prints or pinhole photography. But that's pretty much it until now. We're planning to do a lot more, but it's not much yet.
Mm-hmm. Can we look at the Big Tuna article? I think there's some great photos in there, and I think there's even one video.
It's every step, excluding myself, building the camera. Every step is in there. There is my test prints, a lot of test prints.
Are those test prints 16 by 20, or you shot smaller?
They're 5 by 7. They're just smaller ones, yeah. 5 by 7, and they were always off. It was really. Yeah, it was horrible at first. And then the camera itself, where you can see the lens, you can see the focusing hole, you can also see inside the camera. That's what you see when you look inside the hole in the front of the camera. So the picture is really bright and really crisp. So you can, for framing, it's really, really nice. And then you can see the focusing with the ground glass in the back, and how I focus with the interlocking boxes. Then you can see the sleeves at the side. You can see inside the camera how I load the paper. So I just put my hands in and then take
That's a great picture.
and then hang it. So it's really basic operation. And then the picture with the filters that you can put in the filters before taking the picture, and the shutter as well, just a small cap. And then I also go through developing, and there is a video of developing the picture. And this is the part that really people are like, they do not understand what's going on there. It is so cool. It is so cool. And then there are just a gallery with the best of results, with the tree, with the...
I love this one with the truck.
Yeah, this one with the truck is really, it's insane. It's unbelievable, that picture. I have to do more blue trucks. And then also the link to
there's me.
And the link to Ethan. Yeah.
And the link to this blog post will be in the show notes for this episode for those of you who are not able to watch it. So don't trash this episode. Just hold on to it, get home, and watch it on YouTube. You can even maybe do a little bit of fast forwarding if you've already listened, but you get the idea.
Sam, can you turn off screen share so we can talk to you again? Okay, great. So, I mean, we've kind of just like made this one long roll, but one segment that we like to do is like, what have you been up to this week? And then we like to do, what are you doing next? Let's kind of roll those together, if you don't mind, Graham, and like ask Sam about maybe what else he has been up to sort of recently in the pandemic photographically, and what you might be interested in building or doing in the future. You know, we touched on your stereo camera, but I assume that you've got a few more drawings in that notebook or that head of yours.
Yeah, where should I start? With what I've been up to?
Yeah, sure.
I did, funny enough, I did a lot of pinhole photography recently. So I'm going to build another pinhole camera as well. But I was really into going to old antique stores and looking for stereo photography stuff. So I have like multiple stereo viewing stuff I found this week. And I'm definitely going to build a stereo camera. I already found 2 identical lenses from old size folding cameras. So I have 2 identical lenses. And yeah, at the moment I'm drawing some sketches of a stereo camera. And that's definitely the next thing I'm going to do, because it has to be more portable. I have to be able to carry it around. So I'm all in stereo at the moment.
That's great. Graham and I have we've both gone way down the rabbit hole of learning about stereo images. I have like go to ethanmoses.com/3D. There's a whole section of anaglyphs that I made in 2010 when I built a digital 3D camera, and I have a shelved digital Nimslo.
Okay.
It's I don't know. It's something we're both very interested in. I, in fact, once gave a presentation in 2010 on all of the different methods of capturing and displaying stereographic images, which is when I learned that the only thing more embarrassing than nobody showing up to your giant lecture hall is when one person shows up and you give it to him. But we still had a good time. We did it very informally. Yeah, it's something that's very interesting to me. I'm less interested in analog stereography than digital stereography, just because of the way I prefer to display it. It's like very hard to make analog anaglyphs or analog interlaced striped lenticular prints, although it is certainly done. But yeah, one of these days we're going to have to do like an all stereo show. Maybe you can come back on and show us that camera.
I hope so. Yes.
There are a couple of things that I want to say about doing stereo. That one of them is make sure that your lenses are interocular distance as close to what your eyes are as possible.
Oh,
Make
I
sure.
would.
Oh, and also you want them to be normal in length. So you don't want them to end up telephoto. You don't want them to end up wide. You want them to be as normal as possible. And Ethan is going to contradict me here.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So
Yeah.
I built
He's
a
wrong.
rig that I'm definitely not wrong, Graham. I I built a rig where you could adjust all of these things, and normal focal lengths at a 5 to 10 foot distance with a human interocular distance is reasonable, but like you can take stereo photos of the galaxy on telescopes that are miles apart, right? You can shoot 2 frames in rapid succession in a car moving 60 miles an hour and get super stereo, a telephoto of like a castle off in the distance if you're Sam, or like a White Castle if you're me in America. But I think
I don't disagree with any of this. I'm saying that if you are building one camera, do these things. That's my and Ethan's still going to contradict that. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, the camera that I built had 2 L brackets and then a slider, so you could change their distance apart. And then they also had synced zoom lenses. So often, like, I would shoot very, very close together, as close as I could get them, and very wide angle up in people's faces, which was really effective for like party stuff. But also I shot a bunch of like models for like clothing ads, right? Where you don't want to distort somebody's body, in which case, I would zoom all the way in at like 100 millimeters for like a full body shot, and I'd back way up, 40, 50 feet, at which point, human interocular distance doesn't give you anything. And so I'd space the cameras about a foot apart. And so you could get still like some real pop from a distance that gives reasonable, like Sports Illustrated style. But I think I think it's reasonable to build a camera with 2 lenses that are, 65, 70 millimeter interocular distance of normal focal length. But I also think it's really reasonable to make it kind of adjustable for a lot of other things. You're looking at me like I just lost everybody. And
I about everything. Yeah.
And once again, I had 2 identical point and shoot digital cameras on a rail as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I did all that. And I agree with you. If you're going to be, you're better off being telephoto, better off having a long lens and then widening them. But I'm also thinking about the complexity of that. This was a box camera that he was showing us. So I'm going to say use, with a box camera, use normal lenses at the normal focal length, even if they're ending up cropping to a certain extent. And that will help you out a lot. And also the viewing distance is about the angle of view. So if you have a 16 by 20, you have to stand on the other side of the room to let your eyes make that a stereo image. So think about how you're going to be presenting them. If you're talking about those sliders, those stereopticon slider things, then that's the size. It's a 6x6 negative. Yeah. It's a 6x6. 2 6x6s sitting next to each other, or even smaller, maybe 4x4s.
Yeah, that's
and sliding them in and out. So,
because the paper lends itself so beautifully to this, because you need a stereo color print to view 3D. So it's
right.
Really to do it with this paper.
Yeah. So I look forward to seeing what you do with that. I'm a little bit, I don't have that as a build, but I would love to put that in the queue for next year's builds, so
the Dream Camera Journal.
Right, exactly.
Hey, Sam, moving down the Dream Camera Journal, do you keep a journal of projects you would like to do one day, or things that you have done?
Well, as I stopped doing this because it was just too much and I got frustrated. So it's always just one project is queuing at a time. And at the moment, this is stereo photography. And I have some small other stuff. But building wise, I stopped doing a lot of different projects because in the end, I just get frustrated because you can only do one at a time with a small child.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing you can do any at a time with a small child. I used to have a friend that we built a lot of things with, and he had a baby. We haven't hung out really in like a year. And then his son is now like at the age where you can hand him a wrench and he can hang out. He's like 2.5. He's ready to work on cars. And then he's having another baby. It's the worst.
No, it's just the one, and she is really easy to handle, and she sleeps sometimes, so there is always time.
I'll just pack her up, stick her in your giant camera, take her down the road. Cool. Graham, do we have any other photography-related questions?
I think that I'm good. I'm really excited about this. I want to see more. I want to see how it evolves, and by it I mean this series of cameras that you're doing direct color prints on. I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about starting that myself, and I haven't yet. So yeah. So yeah. But yeah. So I'm good on that.
I would like Sam to keep in mind some more documentation, because there's a lot of us that would really love to see the process a little bit more in depth. Like, I think what you're doing is amazing.
For the next build, I will definitely take more pictures of the building process. I learned that.
Great. Hey, Sam, is there anything that you want to talk about that we missed?
I showed you everything. Yeah, no,
Okay, so now I think would be a great time for you to tell people where they can find you and plug anything that you would like to plug.
Well, you can find me in a store in Zurich, where you're always welcome, because my Instagram and our blog is not really up to date, so I'm really analog. But please, everyone that is in Zurich, please come by. We have a great little shop, and you can always come in and ask everything you'd like. We are open for everything all the time.
Okay, and those of us who are not in Zurich, I might get there one day again. I really loved it. But where can people find you on the internet? There's at least one excellent blog post about this camera.
Exactly. We have our blog, and we also have an Instagram account from Arcimago, Switzerland, and there we try to entertain with quirky, funny, cool stuff that we find. So you can find there a lot. I also have an Instagram myself, but it is not as interesting as the blog post about the big camera.
I bet it's pretty cool. Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, it is just Sam Trachsel.
And we'll have that link on in the show notes. 30. Hang on a second. I was somewhere else.
Graham is probably on eBay looking up parts for things that you have inspired him to do. Graham spends half of our podcasts on eBay when people are doing like really interesting stuff.
I don't share my screen. How do you know?
Well, I know. We've been doing this how long?
Your glasses. You can see it reflecting in your glasses.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
When Graham and I first got on this call, he was like, "Well, hang on, I gotta hold on," and he was like authorizing some DHL shipment of some parts.
Yeah. Hey, as always, we want to give a shout out to Robbie Cribbs of Soundtrap Studios. He's the one who put our music together, and it allows us to use it every week. So thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Robbie.